It is just such a fantastic honor and pleasure to be here tonight. I'd like to start by saying thank you to the audience for coming tonight. The last couple of years, we've watched so many movies sitting in our living rooms. And as someone who's represented filmmakers for my entire professional career, when a director or a producer makes a movie, their dream is that they're going to get to see it and watch an audience's reaction. And I can only imagine how much it means to Beth to have you here tonight. So thank you.
It's true. Thank you so much for coming. I know everybody is afraid of COVID, and I really appreciate it, so thank you.
And it's interesting, you know, I watched this film for the first time about 10 days ago, and I watched it at home on my computer, and I fell in love with the movie, but I can only tell you the experience of watching the movie on a big screen is just such a different experience. So again, so thank you all for being here tonight. Let's start talking about, obviously, about the film. Tell us a little bit, how did you come aware of this story? How did this all come about in the first place?
Well, I live in Los Angeles like you do, and we all sit in traffic, and I was sitting in traffic, and on the radio came Dr. Nof Atamna-Ismaeel, and she was talking about her mission. She had just won MasterChef. She was talking about her mission of bringing Jews and Arabs together through food, and I said, wow, this is a story we don't hear, and it involves food, which is my favorite genre, and I ran home. I said, I have to meet this woman. I got on Facebook, reached out to her, and so, you know, we started talking. Eventually, she told me about her festival, and I said, we've got to tell this story.
So how long ago, what year did she win MasterChef?
She won MasterChef in 2015. So.
And then you first connected with her when?
I connected with her probably like late that year, and we had been talking actually about some projects, different types of food-related projects, and I don't know what took her so long to let me know about her festival, but in 2017 she told me about her. You know what? I think what happened, now that I'm thinking about it, is we got very excited about working on a particular project, and the stabbings started happening. It was 2015, and the wind got out of all of our sales. That's what happens in general, and that's why I actually have that little section on politics when the chefs talk about the restaurants closing, and because that's what happened. So the wind fell out of our sales, and somehow we kept talking, and then at some point in 2017, she told me about this festival.
And so from 2017 to when you went to Israel to shoot this, how long did that take?
That was fast. We sort of, that's what I said, no, how are you telling me about this now? It was late August, and I sort of started to think, well, maybe I can do this, maybe I can do this. I went to Scout at the beginning of November, and when I got there, her main interview was from the Scout, and I said, okay, I think we have something. Came back, and for a month, called friends and family, a lot of you are here tonight probably, and raised just enough money to get through the production, living in, you know, a glorified dorm room basically, and driving around in a car with a two-person crew, which was incredible. And that was it. When I came back and realized I think I have something, I financed the rest of it, and that's how it happened.
And then what?
Oh, sorry, did I say in December? So I scouted beginning of November, took 4 weeks to raise the money because the festival started in December, and made it in December.
Amazing.
Yeah.
They're truly amazing.
Yeah.
It is interesting when you watch her. She is such, it's no surprise when you look at her and her personality and her character. She is such a lovable person that it's only someone like that who could actually bring this kind of festival together. So you must have had a pretty limited crew making this movie on a tight budget.
Yes, so it was just my first phone call when I said I'm going to do this was, my brother's here tonight. He has a friend whose mother is a producer in Israel. I sort of had remembered that, and I got her number, and I called her and I said, can you please put me in touch with the best food cinematographer I can find in Israel? And that was Ofer Ben Yehuda, who I was so lucky So that's how it happened.
Amazing. So when you went there, you hadn't met any of the chefs that were going to be in the festival?
No, I met them as we were going.
Amazing.
So, yeah.
So as you're starting to plan this, and you really had to do a lot of it on the fly, did you have any concerns about what it was going to be like bringing Jewish Israeli and Arab Israeli chefs together, and whether they were going to be open to be speaking? What was that experience like?
You know, again, I mean, I was inspired to tell this story because it sounded like it was a positive story. And if it was going to be authentic, then I wanted to tell it. I remember before I went, a lot of people were naysayers and said, oh, please, you know, okay, yeah, Nof, but she's the only one you're going to find. And I went, and that just was not the case. I wasn't going with any preconceived notions. I just wanted to go and see what it would be, but it was not the case. And in fact, the city of Haifa itself, as you can tell, I fell in love with the city of Haifa, and this became a love letter to it, I feel. But the city of Haifa actually is that. It's people of all different religions without labels, I would say. Yeah.
What was it like? I mean, a lot of people in Israel obviously speak English, but there are large sections of this movie where it's in Hebrew and Arabic, and maybe you know a little bit of Hebrew, but how did you deal with that language barrier?
Sometimes I'm talking to you and wondering, how did this happen? Yeah, so again, I went, I had interviewed Nof. She spoke perfect English, so it didn't really occur to me until I got there that many of the chefs would not speak English and they would speak Hebrew. Now, it turned out that I had spoken Hebrew fluently when I was young, but I hadn't spoken it for decades, and it came back. I could not have made this film if I did not speak Hebrew. There's no way. We tried to do one interview in Arabic, which I don't speak, and that was a disaster. There was just no chemistry, you know, and you're sitting there with all the translation going back and forth. You miss everything. So I'm very fortunate that I was able to do this. I'm not sure I really thought it through ahead of time.
So did you have to have a translator with
No.
you? So when they're speaking Arabic,
They didn't. They spoke Hebrew.
they all spoke
They
Hebrew.
all spoke Hebrew.
So that made it a lot easier. The cinematography is truly beautiful, and even the opening image of the hummus and the opening title, where you see them stirring it, I looked at it and I thought that it almost felt like it was symbolic, and there was something about the story, about the way that was opening shot. But tell me a little bit about that.
Well, yes. I mean, hummus for this is a metaphor. The tagline is "Hummus has no borders." We start the film with a blank plate of hummus, and then we do classic hummus. But eventually, we add toppings from various cultures that you can recognize, like a Greek salad or a bangers of mash, and that was representative of what Nof talked about, how hummus coexists with whatever topping you choose to put on it. So, yeah, and I mean, we really are getting a lot of comments about food porn in all, you know, LA Times, etc. And I have Ofer to thank for that. People ask about it, and this is a situation where we didn't have any food stylists. We took everything on one take. This is a genius person, and I would send him in to film the different montages where we just focus on the one particular dish. Those were taken, you know, in 10, 15 minutes. He'd go in. I'd say, Ofer, go do your magic. He'd go in. He'd film the one from beginning to end, and one time, and that was it. So.
You know, it's interesting, this expression, food porn, I've read about it a lot. It was interesting, my sister in Australia saw the film at the Jewish Film Festival in Australia, and she said to me, as soon as I came out of the cinema, all I wanted to do was get on a plane and go to Israel and eat food. And I was thinking, you know, tonight, because the screening was at 7:30, and I said, do I want to eat beforehand? Do I want to eat after? And of course, having now watched the movie, of course, now I want to go out and eat great food.
Thank you. We won that festival, and we won the Napa Valley Film Festival Audience Award for Favorite Culinary Cinema Film. So that's, thank you.
It's amazing. This film is played in a lot of festivals and a lot of different countries. When you set out to make the film, did you expect it was going to get this kind of reaction?
No. Simple, no. But it's been absolutely, absolutely a joy. I think I was telling you before, I mean, I made this from my heart. I made this because I was obsessed to tell this positive story. We don't hear positive stories, like Nof says in the film, like Anthony Bourdain says in Roadrunner. This was a story of humanity, and so, you know, I was just happy to tell it.
I mean, to me, when I watch the film, one of the things that really resonates for me is that you see two different groups of people from different religious backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, coming together to do something that they just truly love and that they have in common. And to me, it's almost the same way when you look at the film, The Band's Visit, for those who've seen the film, that point of commonality is not food, it's this love of music. And I think, you know, when they say in the middle of the film that there's no room for politics in the kitchen, it's you realize that when the people have come from different cultures, this ability to find something in common is just such an amazing way to break down barriers. And you see that, and even in the discussion when you hear about the children taking food to other neighbors' house, and they may not even speak the same language, and they're exchanging gifts. I mean, it's just such a beautiful thing, and it just creates this energy for hope.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what was such a joy for me, to discover how food is the great uniter, and how you put people in the kitchen together. And there's no politics, there's no religion, it's just people connecting over food and ingredients and recipes and grandparents, and, you know, it's just human beings. That's what the beauty of it is. And I love how, yeah, you can't tell who is who, really.
One of the things that I really noticed when I watched the film tonight that I hadn't really focused on as much, and perhaps because it was being in the cinema, was the music. And the music is really beautiful. I mean, every scene, it changes from different cultures to different music. There's a little flamenco guitar playing. Tell us a little bit about the music and how that came together.
The music was a real passion for me. It was very important for me to continue the themes of the film, where you had Jewish and Muslims coming together. I wanted the music to have those same sounds. So Omar El-Deeb, who's an Egyptian composer, he had this idea of bringing the oud sound throughout, which gave it an Arabic sound. And I said, we have to bring in a violin, an Eastern European sound as well, to sort of blend it together. And the whole process of it was incredible because, again, this was made for a dime, and all the resources that you have to pull together. So, for example, to get the violin, I called my stepsister's friend who lived in Germany, who was in a symphony with her at University of Pennsylvania, and I said, not with my sister, but she was her friend, and I said, can you please play the violin for this film? And she agreed, and so she would send me cues on the phone on the WhatsApp, and we would give notes back and forth on WhatsApp, and then she would record it in Germany, and finally she sent it, and Omar put it all together, and I still can't believe it came together like that. So I'm very proud for Omar and very proud of the score.
So,
thank you.
So before we open it up for questions, I'm sure everybody wants to know what's next for you. You've obviously directed this fantastic documentary. You're going to do more in connection or related to the film, or what are you going to do next?
Well, I'm definitely working on a television show inspired by this, and so that's in the works. I hope that will come through. We have a book. People are asking for the recipes, so I've been trying to put together a cookbook with the recipes from the film. And then I have some other projects as well. I just signed some rights for the Violins of Hope, which is a collection of violins that were collected from people who either passed away in the Holocaust or survivors, but each one has a story. I don't want to do. There have been documentaries done on them as already, and it's it's beautiful, but it's very heartbreaking. I don't like to live in heartbreaking world, so for me, I want to take it forward and do something positive with it. For me, just like here, I wanted to do something positive.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Well, we'd like to open it up to the floor for questions. So if you have a question, please stand up, speak loudly. Yes.
Beth, so Beth and I went to law school together, and we were in law school during the first Gulf War in 1991. And at one point I watched a lot of news coverage there, and they interviewed a lot of people in Israel. And I asked you this question, because I knew you had some experience with Israel, and the question is, why are there so many hot people in Israel? And I repeat the question now, please answer.
Very good question, John Purcell. Let me think about that for a second. Yes, it's a very good observation. That's about all I can say. Good genes.
Yes.
Well, first of all, you did a magnificent job with the film, so congratulations.
Thank you.
Really like it. Secondly, I'm so jealous that you got to eat all that food, because I'm sure you tasted everything. And thirdly, my question is that I'm curious about how the film was received in Israel.
It's a very good question. We played at the Haifa International Film Festival. We were sold out. We did a Q&A afterwards with Hila Alpert and Dr. Nof Atamna-Ismaeel. They did a long discussion about the sort of a continuation of the discussion of the Arabic-Israeli salad. I tried to stay to the side because it's not, I want their voices to speak. But it went over very well. They had to kick us all out, and everybody came to it from the theater, and then they couldn't get rid of us. And then later we played at the Jerusalem Jewish Film Festival, same thing, and she came to that with her mother, which was a very big honor for me. And a couple of the other chefs came. Ilan came and Dochel Safadi came from Nazareth, and that was wonderful. And so, you know, we had a capsule review from the Times of Israel that said it was a fascinating film, but it hasn't had full distribution there yet. And I'm sure, you know, some people will love it and some people will be jaded, and that's the story of Israel. Yeah.
Yes.
First of all, congratulations on a great film. But,
Thank you.
in your experience in making the film and all of your experiences in Israel, when Israeli Jews and Israeli Arabs met one another, for the most part, what language did they speak?
I can only comment on what I covered in the film, and they were speaking Hebrew. I would say Ilan and Osama spoke English for me. They both speak perfect English, perfect Hebrew. Osama speaks Arabic, etc. But Salah and Tomer and Shlomi and Ali all spoke Hebrew together. It's an interesting question. You know, Israel, the official language is Hebrew. So the Arabs that live there have to learn Hebrew, just like you would learn English in the States.
Other questions? Yes.
How much weight did you gain?
Good question. It's a great question. Not that much, only because we were running around like crazy. We were eating like crazy, but boy, we were running around 16-hour days. I didn't have anybody to help me. It was me and the two crew people. So I'd get home, you know, at midnight, and the crew would say, "Okay, Beth, where should we show up tomorrow?" And be like, "This is such a great question. Look at your text in the morning," because I had no idea. And I would come home and I would reach out to all the different chefs because they're up super late and find out who was available. And that's how we did our schedule. It was crazy, but it was a joy. So much fun, a complete adventure, falling in love with the food, with the chefs, with the city of Haifa. And then the whole process of sculpting this film in the editing room. I was laughing because one of my friends here is here tonight, who got the first cut and told me how much it sucked. And it's okay, because it did. And I thought it was so good. Oh, I remember. I thought I'm done. I was telling her, I'm like, Toronto International Film Festival, you know, and I gave it to her and two friends, because I would have to parcel out to get feedback to decide. There's an art form to figuring out the feedback and deciding what you keep and what you don't. But I would give it out to 2 people at a time that I trusted, and they were 2 of the people I gave the first cut to that I trusted. And again, I thought I was done, and I give it to them, and they both said, Beth, like, what? Like, we didn't understand anything. You need to do an intro, you know, that kind of a thing. And anyway, it makes me laugh now. That was the beginning. I thought I was done, and that was the beginning of the process. But it's been a joy.
So
Yeah.
just so how did Cohen Media come to actually see the film? Because
It's a Super Bowl story, Bob. You know that. So basically, exactly. Well, Super Bowl was just before COVID shut down, and what happened was we had won these awards. We had played Napa. We were playing Santa Barbara, and I was so excited. This was already beyond my dreams. We were in 7 festivals already, and it was crazy. And I had a Super Bowl party, and I was talking it up. I was so excited, and that's it. And the next day, Ray Habush called, and he called my husband, and he said, and he said, he didn't say anything to me. He said to my husband, I hope you don't mind, but, you know, Beth was so excited about her film. I called Bob and I called this other person. They both want to see your film. They both wanted it, but Bob got it. And I'm beyond grateful. Yeah.
yes.
Have you talked to any local chefs about having them introduce a few of their dishes in their restaurants for special occasions?
This is a great question. I think as we keep going, tonight we did a fun thing where there's a woman on the way out from Social Hummus who normally does hummus that when she does a drop, it sells out. And I only reached out to her a couple days ago, so we didn't have enough time to really get it out, but she did a very special version of hummus in celebration of breaking bread, and you can probably buy it on the way out. It looked spectacular. And so I would love to do more of that and find restaurants that might do some of the dishes as we go. Again, when the book comes out, I'll work on that too, because I love that idea.
I think the notion of bringing different peoples and cultures together, I hope that we see more of that, because it's certainly something that I would love to see.
I was just going to say, for me, this is about the commonality, finding our commonality rather than focusing on our divide. And I invite everybody, invite your friends. This is about, I feel like this applies to Republicans and Democrats too. I mean, we need to break more bread, and we need to find our commonality. Personally, I think. Yeah.
Yes, up the back.
Thank you so much. Hi, Beth. Wonderful job.
Thank
so much.
you.
Amazing. Can you talk a little bit more about your process? You mentioned a little bit about how when you first spoke with the doctor, that's what sparked your interest and made you say, hey, I got to tell the story. So did you start with an outline and start to kind of film to fit the outline? Or did you just go shoot everything you could, come back to the edit room, and then allow the story to kind of unfold in front of you?
This is an excellent question, and I love talking about this. So this, to me, there's a difference between a narrative film and making this type of documentary film. A narrative film has a script. You give that script to 10 filmmakers, you're going to get the same story. But for me, with this, I went and I shot the footage, and I came back and it was written in the editing room, definitely. Yeah. And the funny thing is if you gave this footage to 10 other filmmakers, you could have 10 completely unrecognizable stories from each other. Somebody could have done one just on Mayan Habira, just on Shoshi and Fadi, the couple who mouth each other's words. How cute is that? So, it was an incredible process. It really was.
I have a question. Since you shot the documentary, have you followed up with any of the chefs to see if they're collaborating and still do?
I speak with all of them. It's difficult because they're in Israel with the time difference and with all COVID and all the crazy things, but I am pretty much in touch with all of them in one way or another. You know, I do know that after the festival, the film festival, where some of the Haifa Film Festival, where they all came, I know Shlomi went to visit Ali at his restaurant for his birthday, so that was nice. But I think since COVID, there's not that much to report. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes.
Yes, I have a question. So, how many people, like if you, let's say you visit Haifa or Jaffa, how many people speak English? Like, is it difficult if you don't speak the language?
I think Israel is a decent place to travel if you don't speak the language. A lot of people speak English. I would think Tel Aviv is a much easier city to get around with English. Haifa, maybe not as much, but a lot of people do speak English in Tel Aviv, I would say.
Well, if we don't have any more questions, I guess I'd like to finish on the following. It was very meaningful to me when she's talking about the movie, about the festival and the lack of coverage from the festival. And it's kind of sad, as she said, that people only want to cover something that is about controversy. And I think it's so great that someone like you would tell this story to actually educate people and see that life in the Middle East and life in Israel is not all about conflict. And I think that the more people tell these kinds of stories and share them with other people, and they can see that the life in Israel is not all about conflict, and there are a lot of people who kind of want to live together and see peace. It's a great thing that you've done, and I hope that other people follow that path and show the best of what can be and not necessarily the worst. So thank you so much for your tremendous film.
Thank you so much.
And thank you all again for coming this evening.
Thank you. Thank you.